Louisiana loses a quarterback to the transfer portal. Let's talk all about it here on Ragin Rundown. What's good, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome into another episode here on Ragin Rundown. I'm your guy, Jamarcus Fitzpatrick, but you can always call me Fitz. If this is your first time making it to the YouTube channel, please hit the bell down below and subscribe. If this is your first time listening, go ahead and follow the podcast feed so you know when we're dropping episodes. And in this bonus coverage episode today, we have news coming in that Louisiana quarterback Walker Howard has decided to enter his name into the transfer portal. Now, it was On3, I believe it was Pete Nakos that came out with the report first, and he actually put in a do not contact tag with him entering the portal as well. I reached out to several people that were, in close proximity of the program, and they all confirmed to me that it was true that Howard would be entering the transfer portal. His journey has been very interesting throughout his career, not just from high school, but all through college. Of a very touted, high school prospect coming out of St. Thomas More way back in the 2022 class. He comes to LSU for a season. He sits behind Jaden Daniels and Garrett Nussmeier. Jaden Daniels announces that he would be coming back for another season. Walker Howard enters the transfer portal and leaves the program, and he goes and joins Lane Kiffin at Ole Miss. He spends 2 seasons there sitting behind Jackson Dart and other players as well in the quarterback room. He sits there for 2 seasons, and then he transfers again, coming to Louisiana, where he felt like he had the best opportunity to be able to win the job. In the quarterback room, it was himself, Lunch Winfield, Daniel Beal, Sam Altman, and Carter Coleman in the bunch. He competes in a 3-man race between Beal and Winfield. He wins the job out of fall camp. And so he kind of comes to a sense of a culmination, or coming to the pinnacle of finally getting the opportunity to be the starting quarterback. After it was named, or it was announced that he would be the starting quarterback, he spoke to the media, and I distinctly remember on that day him telling us of, how he really didn't know if he would even be playing football in the 2025 season.
Fall camp, those meetings honestly haven't gone real good for me in the past. I'm very disappointed, and it's tough. Like, honestly, I didn't think I was going to play football this year. And he was really shocked when I said that. But, Caden Prescorn and Jackson Dart, they really helped me last year. They pushed me forward. They made me go to every single meeting, like all the extra meetings they did to watch film. Those guys really pushed forward, and I texted them yesterday and appreciated them, and texted my dad the same thing. Like, those 3 guys really pushed me forward about next year. And those are the kind of people I was around last year. I had great people, and having great people in your life, make you better.
So Howard really felt like that was an emotional moment for him once he won that starting job. But then from there, he plays in the game against Rice, and Louisiana's offense was kind of stagnant. They were trying to figure things out offensively. And there was a particular play on like a 4th and 2 call where Howard pulled it or ran it on like a QB sweep type of play. He took a hard hit, but he popped back up. And then on the following drive, he would have what looked like a non-contact injury where he went down. He limped off the field. Daniel Beal comes in. The Cajuns lose that game 14-12. And we go along, and we later find out, hat tip to Matt Moscona for breaking that story. We later find out that it was a torn oblique that he had suffered, and that he would be out for what would look like 6 to 8 weeks. He wouldn't be able to throw until later down the line. And so all signs looked as though we would not see Walker Howard play another snap in the vermilion and white, but he was able to return. He comes back and he plays in the Southern Miss game. He comes and plays in the Troy game, the South Alabama, the ULM game that they eventually won in overtime, and then in the 68 Ventures Bowl against Delaware. There were a lot of moments where he came in and, maybe had a drive or two and threw a handful of interceptions. The last moment that he really had that was kind of a shining moment for him came in the ULM overtime victory, where he had a nice run that set them up for the go-ahead game-winning field goal there in overtime. Personally speaking, I've seen much of Walker Howard's journey. The first year that I got here was his senior season. So that was the 2022 class that he was coming out of. I got here in 2021. So I saw him in his senior year playing in a lot of big games. I remember him and Zion Chris dueling it out in high school in their senior years. And then I saw him go to LSU and then to Ole Miss and then to coming here to Louisiana. So his journey, has been tough. Um, and sometimes there are not always going to be things that fall in line with your way. Obviously, no one wants to see a player get hurt, but things happen sometimes. And unfortunately for him, the injury bug bit him at kind of the wrong time. He goes out and we know how the rest of the story goes. But if you don't know, I'll give you, a rundown again. Daniel Beal comes in and he plays in the next handful of games that eventually leads to the Marshall game where the Cajuns went down 31-17. Beal gets taken out. Lunch Winfield goes in, rallies them back to a 54-51 double overtime victory, and the rest is history. Once Lunch kind of took over, the moments that Walker would get into the game were very sparingly. And from there, Lunch became your quarterback one. He rallied you after you went down and were a 2-6 program. He rallied you to 4 straight victories. And then you were able to obviously reach the 68 Ventures Bowl and reach your 8th straight bowl game. So it's very interesting. I'm totally speculating about where Walker may end up, but he has close relationships with Billy Napier, obviously, from his time when, Coach Napier was the head coach at Louisiana. I believe that was Walker Howard's first offer. And just looking at what James Madison has, Alonzo Barnett is now at UCF. Matthew Sluka is out of eligibility. I believe they lost another quarterback of theirs, Blake Kendall, entered the transfer portal, and then they brought in one transfer portal guy. His last name, I think, was Arrington, if I'm not mistaken. I was looking back over some of the articles. So James Madison could need a quarterback. They can need a depth piece. But then also he still has connections with a lot of the staff members that were at Ole Miss, including Pete Golding. Obviously, Trinidad Shambliss has been denied that 6th year of eligibility. They do have Deuce Knight that transferred in, but again, he is familiar with that staff. So we'll keep an eye out on that. We wish Walker all the best, and hopefully he gets an opportunity to be able to showcase his abilities, because he does have abilities that he can bring to the table, and he will be able to do that for a program in college football. I'm going to take a quick break, and when we come back, we're going to talk about the transfer portal class that Louisiana has announced, officially has signed and announced, when we come back here on Ragin Rundown. Louisiana announces 3 transfer portal signings that they have here in this portal cycle. Obviously, the portal opened on January 2nd, and it closes on January the 16th. That is the time when players can officially enter their names in the portal, but teams do not have to, or players don't have to officially sign. The only catch to it or caveat there is that in order for them to participate in spring football, they have to be enrolled, because, as much as this may seem like professional sports because of the money that these players are now making, they still are student athletes. So they have to be enrolled in classes. And so Louisiana starts classes on, January the 14th, which is that Wednesday. I'm recording this episode on Tuesday, so that would be tomorrow. Students will return to class. Jason Mitchell was the first, official commit, and I did confirm with him that he was already enrolled for classes coming into the spring semester. The other 2 signees that come into the program is Broderick Stewart, who's a defensive lineman that's transferring in from Tarleton State. He's 6'3", 315 pounds. And if I'm not mistaken, he has 3 years of eligibility remaining. Yes, he does. 3 years of eligibility remaining. And then the final player that they brought in was somebody that I told you about in a previous episode. You can go back and watch it. Is linebacker Princeton Malbrew, who is from the city of Lafayette, an LCA alum, someone that was a part of that program that has won multiple state championships and has won one himself. When you look at kind of what these guys bring to the table, these are depth piece signings, and also people that potentially could go ahead and start for you at some point in the season. So I did reach out to all 3 of these guys, and I was able to kind of pick their brains a little bit, and I'll try to work to maybe get an official episode with them where you can hear from those guys. But I did get a chance to pick some of their brains about the reason that they chose Louisiana. And before I get into that, you know, I know a lot of people, like I said in the last episode, and you can listen to that rant as well, but I'm going to give a small version of it here. Is I know that a lot of people are wondering why UL didn't sign as many players as what they may have wanted to. And for Coach Desimo, his thing is not about getting the best roster that money can buy. His thing is more about getting players that fit the culture first, which is not being focused on money, but being focused on playing football, getting an opportunity to play the game that they love. Culture first, and then scheme and fit is the secondary thing for him. He wants to get guys in his program that understands what they are ultimately trying to build. Um, so that's your preface. That's why he wasn't focused on getting buku guys here in the transfer portal. His main thing was to sign a bunch of guys in high school, which he still has time to continue to work on that class because signing day is not until the beginning of February. So he has a couple more weeks that if he decides to, he can go and get more high school guys to add to the talent pool. So the first guy that I reached out to obviously was Jace Mitchell when he signed or when he officially committed in last week during January. So, I reached out to him and I asked him, what was one of the reasons that went into his decision for committing to UL. And he said that he had familiarity with the coaches, the scheme, and it was an opportunity that he could, have an opportunity to play. He spent time in Tulane for 2 seasons, didn't get any burn on the playing field. And so now he has the opportunity to do that. He comes in and gives you a depth piece at the tackle position where you just lost an offensive tackle in Bryant Williams, who is now at Arkansas. He took an official visit on January 9th and 10th. And like I said, he did tell me that he was already, or he did apply to be in the school and would officially enroll as well. So again, he's getting guys that have the mindset that they want to come in and play football, that they're not focused on the NIL portion of things. The next player that I reached out to was Broderick Stewart, of course, of the 3 signings. And I asked him what was his main reason for committing. He said that it was close to home and he feels like he can come in and can play. That is true. You're losing Fitzgerald West at the defensive line position. That defensive tackle position. Jalen Kreider is gone as well. You had another 5th-year senior in there. His name is slipping my mind right off the top of my head, but you're losing pieces there on the defensive line. And he has 3 years of eligibility. He can come in, work hard to be able to get an opportunity to play. So, and he's, he didn't take a visit just yet, but he is scheduled to take a visit on campus tomorrow on Wednesday. That is January the 14th. And then the last player, Princeton Malbrew, who is a local talent. I asked him what was his reason for choosing UL, and I'm reading his verbatim quote. He said that I chose UL because it gave me the opportunity to come back home and represent my hometown while playing at a high level. The culture of the program, the sense of family, and the belief the coaches had in me made it feel like the right fit. I also saw a real opportunity to compete, develop, and earn my way onto the field while growing both as a player and as a person, end quote. So this is a guy that is directly lining up with what Coach Desimo is trying to build in the program. So you add 3 guys from the transfer portal that all fit the culture piece and that are depth pieces and could potentially be guys that you could bring in as starters to your signing class. You brought in 20 plus guys in the high school rankings and now 3 in the transfer portal. And that is more than likely going to be all that the Cajuns get, barring, a last second Hail Mary at a quarterback position or anything else, which, with Walker Howard entering the portal, maybe they do try to get an extra player. You have 105 scholarships that NCAA approved you for. You go from 85 to 105 now. So there's a possibility that could come into play, that they go and try to get another quarterback. Maybe it's in the high school rankings, maybe it's in the portal, but I doubt that it'll come from the portal. So those are the 3 guys that you get. Like I said, you have a lot returning on the offensive side of things. You've heard me say it multiple times. I'm looking at my nerded out roster layout of what I have. Shelton Sampson, Landon Batiste, Kadarius Wade, Raji Dennis, Jaden Smith, Christian Brooks, Jaden Johnson, Landon Strother, Trenton Cheney, Russell Babineau, all at the receiver position. On the offensive line, Caden Morrow, Cooper Fordham, Matt Broussard, Jacoby Isom, George Jackson getting a medical red shirt. Ryder Bentley got some reps there in the 68 Ventures Bowl. Balin Williams backed him up. Xavier Brown was hurt near the back of the season, but was in the too deep early on. Then, of course, you have the main piece of your offense, which is the quarterback in Lunch Winfield, Daniel Beal, Sam Altman, Coleman Carter in the quarterback room, running back Stephen Blanco, Darrell Smith, J.J. Gardner, and Key Ryan Smith, the Holy Cross signee. Defensively, you've got Lance Williams coming back. You've got Ashton Wright. You've got Chase Edwards. You've got Ashley Williams. So many other guys, names that I'm missing on here. Obviously, one of your main pieces defensively you have coming back is Brent Gordon Jr. But you have guys that were coming back naturally into your program. So the 10 players that you have lost to the transfer portal, obviously you would have wanted to keep as many as possible. But like I've said in previous episodes, you're revamping, you're rebuilding through the high school rank of things. So the transfer portal cycle is, like I said, about to close on January the 16th, and Louisiana has 3 guys that they have officially signed. Those guys will all be eligible to immediately come into spring practice. Like I said, I'll try to do my best to try to get in touch with them and potentially give you guys some sound bites to hear from them officially. I'm going to take one more break. This is a jam-packed episode, one more break. And when I come back, I'll give you a quick snapshot preview of the Ragin Cajuns taking on Arkansas State, I believe it is, tomorrow in men's college basketball. Let me double check as I'm saying this off the top of my head. I've got a lot of names and schools as I'm saying that before I go to break, so I know that I'm not incorrect with what I'm saying. Texas State is who they are playing. Excuse me. Not Arkansas State. So I'll give you a snapshot of the Texas State Bobcats when we come back here on Ragin Rundown. Louisiana men's basketball, Quantis White and his Ragin Cajuns are coming off of a 90-70 loss against the Troy Trojans, one of the most prolific offenses in the country and the number 1 offense in the Sun Belt. And now they are shifting their focus to a Wednesday matchup where they hit the road and take on the Texas State Bobcats, a team that is 9-9 overall, but they are 2-4 in conference play, and they've actually lost 4 of their last 6 ball games. So their leading scorer is Mark Drone, followed by DJ Hall. Mark Drone is averaging 13.6 points per game. He's shooting about 46% from the floor and 33% from the 3. DJ Hall is averaging 13.3 points per game. He has 7.6 rebounds that he's averaging per game, and he's shooting 56% from the floor, 25% from deep. So DJ Hall is a 6'7" freshman. So he is a young guy, very similar to Josh Lewis. And Mark Drone is a 6-foot senior from Jackson, Mississippi, at your guard position. So Texas State is a very winnable game for Louisiana coming into this one. That is an opportunity that if they go ahead and they're able to put together a good defensive performance and combine that with great offense, like these past few games, what we've been seeing out of Quantis White and his group is that they've played really good offense lately, which was something that they struggled with early on, but they haven't been able to complement it with great defense. And that's something that he really alluded to in his Monday availability when we talked to him.
The last 2 games, I mean, we scored 70 points on Troy, scored 85 on UL Monroe. It's the defense that's been suffering, right? And so we got to find a balance, Let's continue to score that ball like we've been scoring it, but now our defense has been slacking. And so we got to be more connected. I thought we got spread out a bunch, in the game against Troy, and then, our effort and intensity defensively, and not only the Troy game, but UL Monroe wasn't consistent. So we got to get back to defending, and that's what we did today.
So Louisiana will tip off with the Texas State Bobcats on Wednesday. That's January 4th. We're recording this episode on Tuesday. So tomorrow they will tip off at 7:00 p.m. and that game will air on ESPN+. The Cajuns and the Bobcats are both sitting at 2-4 in Sun Belt Conference play, and they're both near the bottom of the standings in the Sun Belt. So Texas State is listed at 10th in the Sun Belt. Meanwhile, Louisiana is tied. They're both tied for 10th place near the bottom. And then below them is ULM, who has not registered a conference win just yet. So again, in games like this, we've talked about it before, in order for them to be one of those competitive teams in the league, they're going to have to either beat the teams that are comparable with them, which is a team like Texas State right now, or they're going to have to beat some of the better teams like what they saw against Troy just last week. So we will keep our eyes on that, and we will continue to talk about all these great topics right here on Ragin Rundown. Guys, if you made it to this point in the video, thank you so much. Do me a favor, leave a comment down below. I'd love to interact with you guys. Like the video and then share it with someone else so that way they can find out about this podcast that we are producing here on Ragin Rundown. If this is your first time listening, please go ahead and give us a follow and also leave us a review so you know when we're dropping episodes here on Ragin Rundown. I'm your guy, Jamarcus Fitzpatrick. We'll see you guys next time.